possible, we like to have a representative from our AAUW Washington office join us for these conferences. And today we are so very lucky to have Meghan Kissell with us. Now, Meghan is the Senior Director of Policy and Membership Advocacy at AAUW. She leads AAUW's nonpartisan public policy at the federal level, and she supports grassroots advocacy work in AAUW's membership. So prior to her work at AAUW, Meghan worked on state and local health policy with the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and has led efforts to expand LGBTQ equality in the Deep South with the Human Rights Campaign. It would take me 2 more minutes listing all of her other accomplishments, but they aren't going to allow me to do that. So I'm just going to say, welcome, Meghan.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you for inviting me. The one other aspect, 2 other aspects of my professional history that I want to add is, first, a shout out to Lily, because go Durango. I spent 7 years working for the Conservation Lands Foundation based in Durango, Colorado, even though I was on the East Coast. So I got to be in Colorado very often. So it's wonderful to see somebody from there join us, especially as a student leader. The other thing that I did want to mention is, many of you may not know this, but this is actually my 2nd time working at AUW. I actually was our field director maybe about 15 years ago. So I worked with Lisa Matz and our team back then. So I really have a deep understanding and history of what it means, what AUW means, what our members mean, who we are together and who we can be. And when I started, one of the things that is actually a change in my title than from others is that we've actually changed my title to be Senior Director of Policy and Member Advocacy, because we've really wanted to stress the importance and recognition of the advocacy that we do at all levels, that the advocacy that is happening at the branch level, at the state level, and at the federal level, and quite frankly, the advocacy that I'm focused on at the federal level can't be done without our members from around the country. And before I give you an overview of what we're focused on at the federal level, I wanted to give you an example of how that connection is really made between the local and state, or the local and federal. That some of you may know that we actually have a lobby corps in DC, and those just happen to be members who are close enough to come to Capitol Hill once a month, come up at 9:30 in the morning, meet in the cafeterias, go out and storm the Hill. And usually what you're seeing is hopefully you all are receiving our 2-minute activist emails that have my name on them. So I should be showing up in your email box quite a lot. And when you get those, it is really important. Even if you have a member that is sending you back form letters, it's still very important to send those in because it's showing those members of Congress that people back home are actually listening. And just like Lily is a really good example of somebody who's considered a real person, as opposed to when I talk to somebody, a member of Congress's office, I'm hired, I work for you. I'm also a member, but I work for you and with you. But it's really important to have real people back home. So our lobby corps, and this was in July, right before the August recess, our lobby corps went up on the Hill to talk about the Equal Rights Amendment. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But they went to Representative Adam Smith's office. He's from Washington State. And their office said, we are interested and we'd like to talk to some folks back home. So the lobby corps folks made sure that I was aware of that, my team. And my team reached out to the state public policy chair in Washington State. We helped them set up a meeting, and they had an in-district meeting. And that's a really fruitful relationship. And it really just demonstrates the value completely going back and forth. So I can't do all of this without you. But what's this? I'll be respectful of time because we have a lot of bills that we're working on any given basis. And most of that work really is through coalition. We have a very small professional staff, but we have wonderful expertise within the coalitions that we're working with. And it really comes down to breaking down our public policy priorities into 3 major categories. And just as a reminder, I know I don't really need to say this to all of you, but these are the public policy priorities that you vote on every other year. So we're not voting on that this year, but that will come up next year to affirm and make any changes if needed to those public policy priorities. Essentially, we're in 3 categories. None of this is a surprise. We're talking about education, we're talking about women's economic security, and we're talking about civil rights. What I wanted to do is share just a couple of things and not get bogged into too many weeds, but a couple of particular issues that we're working on in each one of those categories. And I'm not going to lie, it's a really challenging year in Congress. This has been a very challenging Congress. It's extremely divided. And the fact that we're now well into an election year does make it, I don't want to be too pessimistic, but it's going to be a tough year to get things done through Congress. But there's other avenues that are also happening in DC, so I want to highlight those. Two big things on the education side: Title IX and college affordability. With college affordability, with student loan debt, you've heard that talked about earlier this morning. The Biden administration has been looking for ways to lessen the burden of that college debt. And the more that people are, and I just want to be very clear that college debt is not a young women's issue. It is not an irresponsible 23-year-old issue. It is an issue that the group that has the highest percentage of being in default for student loans is actually over 50 and 60. And we know that more women are taking on student debt than men for a variety of reasons that nobody is surprised about. So student debt is an issue that is impacting multiple generations. And I'm not going to reveal my age, but I'm probably a little older than you think. I will reveal my age. I have been out of college. It's been 30 years. I don't know if I'm proud or embarrassed to say I just finished paying off my student loans last year. I'm almost a year to the day of being college debt free. This is something that is hanging on with people for quite a number of years. So the administration is taking a number of steps. We all know that the Supreme Court said that the steps that the Biden administration tried one method to eliminate a portion of student debt. That didn't go through. So there's what's called a negotiated rulemaking process. It's just the process. It's the formal process to make sure that whatever outcome has the full impact of law. That process has been going on to take a look at what ways within the Higher Education Act that an administration can take to alleviate certain student loan debt. And they're really looking at issues of hardship. So it was originally meant to be a 3 sessions, negotiated rulemaking sessions. Just this week, just about 2 days ago, the administration announced that there will be a 4th session because there were some additional issues, because there are categories of individuals, folks with Parent Plus loans, for example, folks with higher ed loan, graduate degree loans that are not really included in many of the methods that have been discussed so far. So there will be a 4th rulemaking session later this month. The good thing is it still looks like they will be on track to actually come out with a final proposal, final rules on that as early as this May. So there will be a lot more. The other thing that this administration is doing is really just fixing a lot of the systems that already existed. Many people have heard about public service loan forgiveness. There's many other arenas, for example, folks who have been categorized as being permanently disabled, either in the middle for veterans, folks on receiving social SSI benefits, who should have had loans eliminated years ago. A lot of these systems were kind of broken on the bureaucratic side, and a lot of that is getting fixed. So often when you're hearing headlines about new groups of individuals who are having big chunks of loan forgiveness, it's because we're actually fixing the things that we already agreed to do, but we haven't allowed people with student loan debt to have access to them. So the other thing I will say on the congressional side, there are some, I'm challenged about this next step. I'm really glad to say that college affordability and the impact of student debt, it is being discussed. It's being discussed on Capitol Hill, and that is a good thing. Some of the proposals that are coming out may not be as great. So we've got several bills that I would really think categorize as a wolf in sheep's clothing. The one that actually has just moved, I think it was passed this week, but I might be blurred, could have been last week, was the College Cost Reduction Act. It's actually a bill that in its current form, we actually oppose because it doesn't do what its name says. I would be happy to share the bit without going into the details of any one bill, but I would be happy to share any of this. We do have our letter, the coalition letter of opposition that we've written is available on the website. So I'll make sure that that's available. So there is a lot going on there. The other big piece that I wanted to talk about was making sure folks were aware about Title IX. That we've never seen the full impact of the civil rights protections of Title IX, but we've seen 2 steps forward, 5 steps back with what protections exist. In the past administration under Betsy DeVos, and I would be happy to send I'll make sure that the letters that we've sent out are available in the chat. Under the DeVos Department of Education, we saw the rollback of a lot of protections. And the Biden administration has been working to update those Title IX rules, really going through a long, thoughtful process, but the emphasis really here is on a long process. The updated Title IX rules are really way overdue. There has now been a student who entered high school has now had 4 years of school with the former rules under the Trump administration. So what we've been advocating for are Title IX rules that are going to restore protections against sex-based harassment, clarify that protections actually do apply to LGBTQ students, strengthen supports for pregnant and parenting students. And what do I mean by that? Things like making sure that all schools are required to provide clean and private lactation spaces that aren't the bathrooms. So just, strengthening protections for our students. And also really providing clarity for transgender students and athletics. And you've heard just this morning, several people talk about the importance of sports. I was a college athlete. I played sports at a long time. And this is going to be controversial. The pregnant and parenting student protections are going to be controversial. So I'm flagging this for you to say that, one, be frustrated that these rules are so overdue. Be frustrated for all of the students who've been living under the former rules. And we're long past due when these rules should be in place. And what I invite you to do is when the new rules come out, join us. We're going to make sure that we provide a lot of information and education about the different aspects of the different rules, what they mean, and I anticipate that there will be a lot of controversy over multiple aspects of the Title IX rules. So this is one where we're really going to need to work together to make sure that schools aren't scared off and that schools really understand that there is a local community demand for these new Title IX rules to be implemented in full when they come out. We're anticipating that they should come out in March, and I'm not normally a betting person, but I would bet they're going to be later in March, not earlier. But for a variety of reasons, it's incredibly important that they come out before the end of April. So that gives you a little bit of a time frame of when to look for these. So a lot more to come on Title IX. A couple of things, quick things on economic security, because I really wanted to emphasize that despite the fact that I live in the DC area now, that yes, I can be cynical, but there are some wins. Every once in a while, we do actually make some progress. And last year is a really good example of that. The Pregnant Workers Fairness Act was passed in December of 22 and implemented in June of this past year. So this was a big step, and I want to say a big shout out to everybody who wrote countless number of letters, made phone calls, and really made sure that Congress heard from around the country how important this law was. So this law actually now has gone into effect, and there's been we're seeing some guidance to make sure that there's strong implementation of the law. Just on Monday, the federal the Office of Management OPM, the Office of Personnel and Management. Sorry, speaking in acronyms because I live too close to DC, that has just issued new rules that for anybody new incoming to the federal government will no longer have their salary history be used in terms of taken into account when their starting salary is set. So this is an important step. Many states have been taking this step. I forgot the exact number, but about 20 states have actually taken this step. This is a really important step because the federal government is the country's largest employer, and there is now a proposed rule to have this same type of the salary history ban and some salary transparency applied to federal contractors as well. So we're definitely seeing some progress there, but we still have a lot to go. You'll hear us as we get to Equal Pay Day, which is going to be on March 12th. So Tuesday, March 12th is our overall Equal Pay Day, and then we will have subsequent Equal Pay Days to highlight issues for particular groups of women. But March 12th is Equal Pay Day for 2024. You'll hear us talk quite a bit about the Paycheck Fairness Act, which we've been working on for a while, and we will continue to work on. Should never say this to a crowd. I'm not fully optimistic that this one is going to get across the finish line this year. Just saying. But it's still important for us to have a really strong showing because this is a bill that has a tremendous amount of potential for the impact that it would have is great. And the stronger we have a good showing every year and our continued support for this bill and bills like the Salary Transparency Act, that even if we don't during an election year see this bill cross over the finish line, it sets us up for really strong support. Not that I'm punting everything to next year, but acknowledging that some of our work is going to be more challenging than others. Regarding economic security, we're also really focused on paid leave bills, both a paid sick leave bill called the Healthy Families Act and a paid family medical leave act called the Family Act. So looking at some of those paid leave bills as well. The last thing I wanted, two more. I did just want to turn to civil rights and mention that that's where we kind of put encompassing when we're talking about access to abortion care. There's actually not much on the federal level, and that's incredibly frustrating. But I did just want to acknowledge that and flag that as we're coming up on the second anniversary now of the Dobbs decision in the Supreme Court this June, and to say this really comes back to the states. And this is when we're talking about a partnership between national and the states. This is actually where Sue Ryden knows this. we're having conversations about what can national do to support the work that you were doing at the state level, knowing that there are ballot measures in many states, and what can we do to be supportive of what's happening on the ground. So I did just want to acknowledge that, but I also wanted to acknowledge our work on the Equal Rights Amendment for the U.S. Constitution. We've got a couple of states that are working on state constitutional amendments. I want to be very clear that AUW firmly supports that the Equal Rights Amendment has been ratified by enough states and should be affirmed as the 28th Amendment to the Constitution. We have some political challenges. We have many political challenges here. But there are two different avenues in Congress to try to continue pushing this forward. Last year, we saw a tremendous amount of momentum. We saw a congressional resolution to affirm that the arbitrary deadline that was put on the ratification was an arbitrary deadline. And there's a lot of legal reasons for us taking that position, that why we legally believe that this is the case. There's also been a resolution put forward to just flat out instruct the archivist to publish the 28th Amendment. Both of these have different challenges, but we're working on both angles. So I want to let everybody know that we're not picking and choosing, but we are working actively on both. And in fact, we've recently joined a strategic task force with the ERA Coalition to really focus even more deeply this year, working on the ERA and working with the states to see what we can do to move forward. And last year, it was the first time we've ever seen Congress actually have an ERA caucus at the congressional level. So a lot of new momentum. We had a Senate vote last year on the ERA. So people are paying attention. And the ERA, what we're seeing in polling is also that this is a good motivating factor when it comes to the elections. So let me end with that you will hear a lot about us talking about our It's My Vote voter engagement campaign this year. We'll be launching that in the next couple of weeks, and a refreshed version. But at the end of the day, it really is about making sure that everybody who's eligible to vote is able to vote, is invited to vote, is encouraged to vote, that we're sharing information about all of the issues that I just mentioned and so many of the issues that you're working on, particularly at the state level, that we're sharing good information about what these issues are, and that these issues really are so impacted by the outcome of what happens in November at every level of government, even down to school boards. So we invite everybody to continue to be engaged. And just the fact that you're on this, joining this meeting today shows me that you are definitely some of the most engaged people in your communities. So let me close with that, with a thank you for all that you're doing, that you're continuing to do. And if there's any questions, happy to take them.
Thank you, Megan. I don't see any questions in the chat, so we can, I will close my question session.
All right, thank you so much for that presentation. That really catches us up to date, and we're glad about that.